Hello, Joseph. Delighted to be chatting with you again. Howdy, how are you, sir?
Fine, sir. Thank you so much. How are you today?
I'm very good,
Hey,
thanks.
it's good to finally make your acquaintance after missing your last couple of Zoom calls. So it's a pleasure. And I believe you're in New Hampshire. So with your wife, Susan, what's it like in
Yes.
New Hampshire today? Is it, well, warmer than
Today,
here, I hope?
today is a good day. It's actually in the high 40s Fahrenheit. Um, Bright sunshine. The snow is melting. You can go outside with just a sweatshirt on, walk around, enjoy yourself, take the dog for a walk. It's a good day.
Oh, that's not too bad, I suppose, is it? We've had a couple of cold days and a lot of snow over the last few days, so it's gone a really quite cool. I think we got lulled into a false sense of security last week with some sun and the temperature's creeping up, but this week bang, snow again. But it's
Yep.
almost cleared up again, and so hopefully it'll start warming up a little.
Well, we've had a few chats over the past couple of years. And before we move on to your main focus, which is this book behind me, What Think You Do?
Yeah.
I never knew that back in the day. Your background, you had a background as what, an apprentice. I'm reading this from the script here. An apprentice butcher, a coffee buyer, a lumberjack, a long haul trucker. Tell me about these experiences, Joseph.
Well, the long haul trucker, my dad worked for a meatpacking company. So this is when I was in high school. This was actually when I was quite young, 12, 13 years old. And he wanted me to experience more than, living home, going to school. So he managed to get me a job as what we used to call a lumper, which was basically the guy, a lumper, Lumper. And the lumper was basically the guy who got the two-wheeler, unloaded the truck, loaded the truck. That was it, while the driver went to the bathroom, had a coffee, right? So I did that for 3 or 4 years. And now I'm like 15, 16 years old, at the point in New Hampshire back in the day where you could get a regular license, a driver's license, not a commercial license. So I was friendly with a lot of the drivers. We had one guy called Okie. His real name was Penky Blegenschitz. And
A real name?
That was his real name, Penky Blegenschitz. Wow. And he spoke with this thick Okie accent. So he just call me Okie. It's okay. And another driver was Frenchy, and we had Riyadh. And they would say, "Do you want to drive?" Sure. Here I am with everything from a deuce and a half up to heavy commercial, not a tractor trailer yet. So I was driving. These dual axle, speed shift, everything else, pin drive. And my dad had a tractor trailer license. We called him TT. And he said, "Why don't you come down? You can help me move the trucks to the loading bays in the yard." So, okay, sure. So I learned the most difficult part of tractor trailer driving, first thing, backing those up. Yeah. That's the one that always throws. You can go in a straight line real easy. Backing up, roll. So I learned how to back up into these narrow loading docks. And he said to me, I got you an appointment. You're going to go for your TT license." I am? Said, yeah. "I don't even have my commercial license, Dad." "Shut up. He doesn't know that." And there was no computers back then. You couldn't look up, right? You had to go look at a filing card. And the guy knew my dad. So he said, "Yeah, we're gonna teach you for a TT. We're gonna see you." And that was it. I got my TT license. So here I am in my sophomore, junior, and senior years of high school. And on the weekends, Friday night, I go down to the loading dock, get my TT loaded up, and I'm driving. I'm underage. I should not have a license, but I was always a big kid, and now I have my own lumper. So now I'm giving him grief. Right? Get the hell out and unload that truck, you putz. And my longest run before Canada had major highways in the Maritimes. My longest drive was from Sydney, Nova Scotia to Washington, D.C., which, if you look on a map, that's quite the haul. And I did it in 17 hours, which basically means I'm towing 60 tons behind me doing low altitude flying.
Wow.
You know? But back in the day, this is the other thing. This is when you had CB radios. Everybody, oh yeah, CB craze.
Yeah.
Back in the day, the troopers, the state troopers, would get to know the rigs. So they knew who you were. And they, yeah, hi, how you doing? Yeah, okay, you know. And sometimes they get on the CB radio and say, you know, there's a new guy down the state line. Slow it down just for the 15 miles before you go across the state line. He won't be, you know, so it doesn't bother you. Hey, thanks. You know, it was great. So that was long haul trucking. Lumberjack. I spent I spent a chunk of my youth up in Canada, up in northern Canada. And up there at the time, there was not a lot to do. You either did coal regions research, which I did do, or you did lumbering, which I did do. Coffee brokering, coffee buying and coffee broker. I ended up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which in the day was a seaport. And I happened to be unloading or helping to unload a freight carrier. And what the hell is that smell? And there's this wizened old guy. I'm young, right? I'm in my 20s, so he could have been wizened old. He's probably in his late 40s, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he's watching me, and he comes over, and he's got this Hispanic Southern American accent, Northern South America, Venezuela. And he's looking at me and goes, "What do you smell?" I said, "I don't know, but smell. You shouldn't be able to smell that." Okay, what should I not be able to smell? And he comes back with me, pulls me back, and he opens up this thing, and it's green coffee beans. He says, "Is this what you're smelling?" I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Wow, there's like 1 in 50,000 people who can smell a green bean. You normally have to roast the beans to know whether they're good or not." I said, "Oh, well, lucky me." And he goes, "Yeah, that's a skill not everybody has. You want to learn how to be a coffee buyer?"
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So now I'm a coffee buyer and coffee broker. And part of that involved this was before Starbucks, long before Starbucks. I would travel to different places in the US and Canada and help people start coffee houses. Probably the best known of those, I'm not even sure if it's still around, was in Marblehead, Mass, the King's Rook. Boy, that was a heck of a place. And I was talking later on in my life, in my 30s, I lived in Indianapolis. And some lady started a coffee store. I saw it, I went in, and I smelling and sniffing, and I'm actually taking the beans, the roasted beans they have, and chewing them. And that should have been at 400 degrees for about 5 minutes longer. That should have been. Well, how do you know this? I told them.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine who's still in Indianapolis, for that coffee shop for those ladies, I created a bunch of blends. Here's a wedding blend. Here's different kinds of things. Here's a morning blend. Here's an afternoon blend. And one of the hallmark blends was JC's blend, Joseph Carrabis' blend.
Oh, yeah.
They're still selling it in that store 30 years after the
Wow.
fact. Now, here's the thing most people don't know, because you got me talking about it. So tell me to shut up if you want. Most people don't realize coffee originally was medicinal. And if you know how to create coffees, how to roast coffees, and how to blend coffee beans, you can create a coffee that gets rid of headaches because of the caffeine load. You can get a coffee that takes care of menstrual cramps, relieves menstrual cramps. You can get a coffee that'll put you to sleep. Everybody says, "Oh my God, you got a caffeine." No,
Yeah, keep you awake.
It depends if you know the properties of the different coffees. You can create medicinal brews to help people and solve, intestinal problems or emotional, psychological problems. They can't go to sleep. They're wired. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Steve's looking at me like, and I think you're still smoking the good stuff down there. Butcher for a while. Yes, I was apprenticed to a butcher. Those were my college days. There was a butcher shop that needed somebody to do deliveries for them and who knew cuts of meat. I knew how to do deliveries. The guy said, okay, I'm going to teach you how to do cuts of meat. So I'm doing cuts of meat. And all of a sudden, he's giving me more and more of the cuts of meat to do when people walk into the store. So he said, if you want, you can actually get a job as an apprentice butcher. I can increase your pay. And I went, oh, no, please don't increase my pay. That would be a horrible thing to do. So I became an apprentice butcher.
Yeah. It's a brilliant background, Joseph. Jumping miles forward, from that, may I say, humble beginning, you had a global company, Next Stage.
Yeah, I did. Next Stage Evolution.
So big jump there.
Just
gone from farm boy, Nova Scotia, to companies all over the world.
Yeah, that was a fascinating journey. I literally created the technology in my basement, and we got I forget how many patents we got on it. And we could have gotten a lot more, and I said, "No, we're done." But the United States Patent and Trade Office, this is not something we said. This is what they said when they awarded us the base patent. Next Stage has created a technology which can understand and respond to human thought through any human machine interface. So if you have a moment, think to yourself, well, let's see. Machines that can understand and respond to human thought. So instead of saying, name of device, please turn on the lights, please turn on the TV, all you have to do is sit in your comfortable recliner and think it. And there's a system which will recognize that, respond to it. If you're holding a remote control, the remote control can be have the programming in it. Your car, higher end cars, which know you versus your wife driving versus your kid driving. Or another use for it, a higher end vehicle, which knows just by the way you get in the car, you're too drunk to drive, or you're intoxicated or inebriated or under the influence of something. Let me give you the big one. You're flying a passenger plane, a passenger jet, and something happens. Somebody comes into the cockpit and threatens the plane or you. Just by the way you're holding the mechanisms, just by the way you touch them, the plane now has the smarts to recognize you are under threat and signal for a fight or escort.
Wow.
I'm very proud of that one.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was something I did, it was a knockoff. It was either that or cut pork chops. You know what I'm saying?
Joe, so to move on to our main focus, we want to talk about your latest book.
Yeah.
That Think You Do. I've read the book. I gave it my 5-star reviews on Amazon and Goodreads, as you know. Tell Steve about the book. He hasn't had a chance to have a read yet.
No, I haven't. So I'm really interested, actually. Yeah.
Well, the technology that I was just describing, that grew out of my fascination with neuroscience and anthropology and a whole bunch of other disciplines. And to create that technology, I had to use these other disciplines in ways most people would never think of, which leads to the farm boy from Nova Scotia line. Yeah. And I put them together in ways so that a laptop, we're talking the mid-1990s, a laptop, we're talking 286 computer system.
Massively expensive as well.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So a 286 laptop computer, you could run the technology on it because I didn't know how to program. So nobody was telling me I was doing it the wrong way, which meant I was free to do all sorts of stuff incorrectly, which worked. That's the key. So I created this technology, and we recognized there were applications everywhere for it. If you just think during the day, how many things do you interact with which have some kind of processor inside? Your TV system, your cable box, your hand remote, your phone, your this, your that, your car. So we realized it had a very broad, as a matter of fact, one of our early investors called it a base disruptive technology. And another one of our early investors said, you basically created plastic. It doesn't matter if you want a bottle, if you want a basketball, or a car dashboard. This technology can be shaped to do anything you need it to do, which was fairly accurate. So we set up a bunch of companies, each one of them to explore applications in a different area of technology. The one place we had a major failure, huge failure, was in web analytics, which I thought personally was the most obvious choice. Because this was back when, oh my God, the internet, have you ever heard of this thing? It's an amazing thing. But the measurement systems were not accurate, not good. They couldn't tell you any usable information. And if in your copious free time, you should get one of my books, Reading Virtual Minds, Volume 1, Science and History. I actually explain in detail how the technology works. And, you know, I give you several examples of how we developed it. And, you know, it was accurately predicting political outcomes in several countries, which was what it could do. It was designed to understand humans to the point where it could predict accurately behaviors. So on one side, we had utter failure. On the other side, we had massive successes. So we gave up. We basically got out of the web analytics concept because big issues and a lot of politics that I was totally unprepared for. Well, all the stuff that I put into that technology, because I had to do some deep research in neuroscience, psychology, psycholinguistics, anthrolinguistics, sociolinguistics, group dynamics, field theory, so on, blah, 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 blah. I realized as I was doing all this research, that's a very interesting fact. For example, one that Terry brought to my attention, he really liked, was get a good mat on. Get a good mat on. Yeah. Which explains that if you're going into a situation and you suspect or know for a fact the situation is going to be hostile, and I don't mean combat, I mean you're going to a business meeting and you know the other person is going to be upset or just is going to be a prick.
Yeah.
You can edit that part out.
No, leave it in. I just have something strong at the meetings I used to go to.
Yeah, right.
I used to shit myself before going in, Joseph, literally. Not literally, but almost.
So a lot of people will, I'm going to be calm no matter what they say. I'm going to be, you know, no, you can't bug me. Well, from a neuroscience and anthro evolutionary background perspective, the best thing you can do is actually get a little hot under the collar before you go in. Yeah. The reason to do that is because if you're, you know, number one, if you're a little hot under the collar, you're going to come forward, literally. You're going to come forward, right? And you're going to be a little bit more upright in your chair because you're going to be waiting for it. Yeah. Okay, so that's what happens physically. Psychologically and neurophysically, the brain releases a bunch of hormones, which are basically hormones. Okay, they're killer hormones. And what happens is you don't have to be hostile, but you can be much more aware. Little things happen people aren't aware of. Your eyesight gets keener. Even if you have glasses like myself, like all of us, your eyes open wider. I'm not saying you can read signs far away, but your eyes, they're ready. You're looking for it. Then the funny thing that happens, if you're really in a situation, your nostrils begin to flare. Oh. I don't know if you can, I'm exaggerating it when I do that. Yeah. but your nostrils flare a little bit. All of these things are deep inside our neurophysiology. We recognize when we see them in somebody else. Those are predator moves. Predators keep their eyes open. They flare their nostrils to get a lot of good oxygen into their system, and they're ready. They're up. So this other person in the business meeting is being an unkind person. There, I changed it for you. They're being an unkind person. And all of a sudden you walk in, yeah, okay, can you explain that to me again? And they're like, well,
they back down.
Whoa, I didn't, cool down. No, I understand you have an issue. I just am curious to know what exactly that issue is. And, Terry was telling me an example where he knew they were going to be chewing his ass off at some kind of meeting. And if you went in ready to fight, you didn't have to fight, but if you went in ready to fight, right, you were like, okay, did you try anything else? Were there other solutions we could have used? Who is responsible? The one that I loved, I taught people this in business. Ask them who was responsible, who made the final decision. 9 times out of 10, it wasn't you, and they want to dump on you. Which, if you want them to, fine. But otherwise, why am I being involved in this conversation again? I'm not even sure why I'm here. I got called into this meeting. Why?
You say attack's the best form of defense. I think of it in terms like a cat as well. If you ever surprise a cat, you'll see it sort of rise, double in size, standing on its tiptoes, its ears are poking up. Twice the size. I think, hang on a sec, I might give that a miss.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. Very true. You're right. I'm just trying to think of all the different scenarios I've been in, and it's exactly like that. And if you're prepared, you stand off a chance, don't you? Yeah. Good stuff.
It's being psychologically prepared because of the way the brain is wired. When we psychologically prepare ourselves, the brain releases chemicals into our system. Our adrenaline begins pumping. Our heart becomes more active. Our blood flows quicker through our veins and arteries. It's amazing. As soon as you begin learning this stuff, which is what I put into the book, as soon as you begin learning this stuff, you're way ahead of the game in all sorts of social situations, even situations with your partner in life. Not to say that you want to be hostile to them, but be aware of, oh, I wasn't really paying attention. I need to pay more attention. Those are some of the chapters in the book I believe Terry might have recognized.
Yeah. I liked about the book was I read it in one sitting, well, actually 2 sittings, but I found myself going back to particular chapters that resonated, that stood out for me. As though you'd sort of, it stands out the fact that you've lived through these experiences. It's based on real life wisdom.
Yes. Yeah, the real example there, I guess, is the chapter entitled The Liz Effect, about a girl I dated, a young woman I dated long time ago. Don't tell Susan.
Playing pool, playing pool with the family.
Yeah. I recognized rapidly she was challenged in ways I did not wish to be involved in. Is that a polite, correct way to say it? She had issues. Basically, she had issues. And a lot of people who have those types of issues that she had, of insecurity, of inadequacy, of trying to make herself more than she was, they dump on the people around them because they need the people around them. It's kind of like, there's something else you can cut out. It's kind of like Trump. He needs people around him going, yeah, you're right. Yeah, right. And then you say, Don, whoa. And he's really a schmuck. My personal political opinion. Well, people like that, if you recognize they're like that, you also must recognize that they're going to victimize you to not be victimized themselves. They're going to dump on you. Something happens to them, they're going to pass it on to you. Back away. Get away from those relationships. They're toxic. They're poisonous. They are hurtful. They will not do you well. Although you may get a book chapter out of them someday.
Okay.
I noticed a couple of things. You've got an excellent website there, which is really good. I've just been looking down it before, so that's great stuff. And I also noticed on Amazon 3 full pages of listing for your work, which is mostly fiction. But which gender appeals to you most? Do you prefer fiction or non-fiction? I'm trying to make my mind up when I'm looking through your stuff. And one minute I'm going non-fiction, then I'm going fiction. But
well, the truth of the matter is, whether I'm writing fiction or nonfiction, I'm writing autobiography. Everything is right out of my life. So if you were to say, what's my favorite genre to create, I would have to say fiction, because it's very easy, and most fiction authors would recognize this. It's very easy to take a real life situation and hyperbolize it into what could be called a mythical setting, not mythical like gods and demons, but a fantastical setting, a different kind of setting. So, for example, The Augmented Man, which I know Terry has read, and you should see. And leave a great review when you do.
It's a brilliant read. Yep.
That's based on my real life experiences. And rather than say that, you know, this main character who conceives of himself mentally as some kind of monster because of all the havoc and destruction he's done, I wrote the main character to be a monster, to be basically a Frankenstein type creature who's desperate to be human because he falls in love.
The Augmented Man, Episode 2. In 13 March 2042, Orinoco extraction. 10 years, 2 months, 13 days since Manacapro truce ended conflict. Massively scarred.
Donaldson shivered as he keyed his mobile for secured voice-only transmission. "Did you hear me, Major?" the voice asked. "Brazil's found somebody's got to be one of your men." Trailer emerged from the jungle massively scarred. He'd been strapped on his knees, his arms pulled back, barred, and his wrists strapped to his ankles. Even Trailer couldn't remember how long. He had neither fingertips nor fingernails, because they had burnt the tops of all the nails on both hands. Blisters formed underneath the nails, causing incredible pressure on the tips of the fingers and the inability to move the fingers or hold things. Period.
So he goes and finds the people who created him and help me be human or kill me, because the way I am, I will kill the person I love, because I can't make the difference. I don't know the difference. So there you go. Empty Sky, which is another book. It's going to be republished, brand new edition in a couple of months. That's all about this technology I was talking about creating it and how it was used.
Superb. Okay. What advice would you give for someone who's getting into writing for the first time then?
The advice I would give anyone getting into writing is find people who will understand what you're working at and critique it, not you. A lot of critique groups will critique the individual through their work. No, that's bull. That's worthless. Take a look at what the person wrote, critique that. If you don't understand what was written, for whatever reason, ask for clarification. The clarification they give may explain what they were really going after. And then they can put it in for the next rewrite. So find people who will tell you the truth about the work, not about you. And I've told many people, I don't particularly like a person, but I will critique their work, without getting them involved, because this right here, this is what I'm looking at. Not looking at them, I'm looking at this. That's number one. Number two, learn how to read. Everybody says when you're learning to write, when you want to become an author, read, read, read. But nobody explains how to do it. Read it, but don't just, wow, I read the book in 2 days. Read it to see their technique, to learn their technique, to copy to steal their technique. This paragraph made me sad. Okay, go back. Why did it make you sad? What was in here that made you sad? I didn't expect this, but this thing happened in the story, and it was a great thing that I didn't expect, but I kind of did. I really did throw me out of the story. Okay, find the parts in the story before this point that got you here. That's how you thread the narrative. That is how you develop plot points. That's how you develop character. Mm-hmm. So learn how to read so that you can become a better author, and find a critique group that honors you enough to challenge the work.
Yeah, it's a good point, that what you say about reading and taking it in rather than just reading. Yeah, I've read that book. Yeah, and then I go on to the next one. Yeah, valid point.
That's great advice. But Joseph, on that note, we'll have to say thank you very much, and let's keep in touch.
Definitely. Let's do this again for my other books coming out.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, okay. It's flown by. It's been really interesting as well, and it's just bang, it's gone. Time's just gone.
It was. But we'll chat again, Joseph.
Yes, love to chat again.
Brilliant. But for now, cheers.
Take care, guys. Thank you,
Joseph.